Wow, it just popped up over there. Okay, cool.
Ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba-ba-boom.
How's your weekend,
Ba-bum-bum-bum-bum.
Gabe?
Fantastic, man. Today is awesome.
Was it?
There you go. You're
Nice.
live.
Yeah, we
Hey
are.
guys, what's
We're just wait.
happening? Welcome to the podcast tonight or the Zoom call. Mark, what's up, dude?
Gabe, I'm doing well. Thanks so much for jumping on. And I'm excited for tonight and just opening this up. This is our first time doing this in the nighttime, opening it up. Almost kind of has a feel to our real estate power play, but this is going to be a little bit different. This is more for seller financing and creative real estate investing. So thanks for jumping on, Gabe. I really appreciate it. How you been, man?
I've been good. I've been good. So
We're still
I'm gonna
letting
go ahead.
everybody in.
Yeah, we're
Yep.
just keep on letting people in here. And
So cool. And if anybody's listening to us in the seller financing group, if you guys want to jump in and listen to us live and on Zoom and have any questions, feel free to jump over and join us in the Zoom. The link should be below
I'll get it in there.
in it. So it should be. If not, we'll get it. So
Yeah.
we'll see here. So what we'll do tonight is, Gabe and I will talk a little bit, and then anybody in Zoom, anybody that has any questions and answers, we'll bring you guys up on the stage here, and we'll just ask questions. I'm excited about it. So thank you guys for all joining. I appreciate it. We're still waiting for some more people popping in here. So, anyways. So, and if you guys,
Let's
oh,
go.
you let some people in. Thanks for helping out there. But also, you guys, we do have a podcast, Gabe and I, called Real Estate Power Play. So you guys definitely should check that out on any of your favorite platforms, and also YouTube, and yeah. So it's called Real Estate Power Play. So Gabe,
Desmond,
why don't
what's
we
up,
just kind of,
dude?
yeah, let's just
Kevin,
kind of get into it.
Marlon, Max, Nicole, Ryan, Siobhan, Sean. Got it. All right, y'all. Let's get learning.
Hey
So
Max,
we do the
by the way,
podcast. Go ahead. We do the podcast every Thursday. Um, right, Mark? It comes out every Thursday and
10 a.m. Eastern
10,
Standard.
10 a.m. Eastern time. So you guys should be able to see us on all those things. And we'll put other links in there too. So but let's get some questions going from Mark. Thanks, Tommy, for putting in the link. So, Mark, creative financing, what is, just to kind of get the conversation going, what is one of the things that, and I've been in the seller financing homes group for a while, just looking through, um, what is one of the things that you've been seeing pop up lately that's kind of a trend that maybe you haven't been seeing in maybe 6 months or 12 months ago, and you're noticing a little bit different lately that has been in like the seller financing or what people have been doing? Maybe the market's changing. Maybe there's I know I've noticed I have a couple lags in the days on market, so to speak. What is something for you that you've been noticing?
Definitely the seller financing has popped up. Overall, mainly subject to is pretty much the hottest thing out there right now. That's really what's been out there, mainly because a lot of the coaches have been pushing that program pretty strong out there. So that's probably one of the main things that I've been seeing out there. We're seeing a lot of in the group here, a lot of deals being posted in seller financing. So we're seeing some of those. So we're buying deals. So keep on bringing them in because we're always constantly purchasing subject to. And I know you purchased a couple down there in the Houston market recently too, Gabe. Is that not correct?
Yes, for sure. And what's crazy is that I've been seeing some all throughout Texas because we buy predominantly seller financing is in the Texas market. Debt takeovers, commercial that we do throughout the nation. Um, and yeah, I've been definitely seeing a lot more seller. Actually, my main guy today was saying we've called many people today. We call expired listings sometimes. We call all types of lead sources, and we used to be the only person calling, and now we're one of many. They're like, "Oh, tell me more about this." So it's kind of interesting.
Sure, Gabe. Well, let's give a little background on ourselves. Like, how long ago did you get in real estate, and how did you get in real estate?
So I got involved in real estate it's kind of like a weird story. So I used to be a rehabber by trade. I was the construction guy. So that's all I did was flip houses. I flipped houses for realtors. That's really how I got started. I noticed that there was a gap there of communication. So I put myself in that gap, provided value for the marketplace. Then I started flipping for other investors. Then I started flipping for ourselves. In the meantime, I started learning, did some coaching and did some other stuff, learning wholesaling and other short-term strategies. And then gradually went up to other creative things like wholesaling, creative financing, other stuff like that throughout the years. The last couple of years, we've been doing a lot more creative financing, definitely since 2019, 2020. And then from there, we started going into more commercial stuff. So we have mobile home parks to commercial stuff. Um, right now, we're looking for retail shopping centers, industrial parks, um, you name it. So that's really my back end story. And right now, our single family arm, we're still creating notes. And you're one of the guys who've helped me to really understand how to be more creative. You're probably one of the more creative guys out there right now when it comes to how to structure a note. Maybe there's some other ways to maneuver, who to contact, maybe contact a different person than I might have in my network. So those all been very helpful from you. So yeah, that's my background.
Cool. Cool. So I'll give a little bit on my background too. Max, I do want to Max's shout out. I do want to give a shout out to Max as well. Max, thank you so much for the invite. I went over to Naples last Wednesday to speak at his networking event. So if anybody's
Nice.
in the Naples area, if you're looking in the seller financing group or if wherever you're listening, just look for last week. You can just look under events, past events, and Max, if you could throw your link into your event group so people in the Naples area definitely. So a little bit about my background, as you guys know, majority of you guys know, I started out um, mainly at the age of 24, 25 in real estate banking. Yeah, that's where I really got into it. I ended up having a mortgage company with 107 loan officers way back in the day, and that's what kind of blew it up. However, my first deal, I was at the age of 19. So that was my really first deal, and I did the old Carlton Sheets, and I had no clue what I was doing. And I went and got these bandit signs, the roadside bandits, we buy houses. And I grew up in a small little town up in Vermont, and I went and put them on the telephone poles, we buy homes. And I didn't know I couldn't at the age of 19, I didn't know I could put signs on the telephone pole. So I got a call from the municipality, get over here, take this thing down. So but during that time period before I got it down, I actually had somebody call me. And the gentleman called me, he goes, hey, I got this mobile home for sale. Goes, he says it's worth $21,000. Give me $18,000 for it. And I'm like, I had no clue what I was doing. I'm just talking to him. I'm like, well, you know what? I'm not interested in mobile homes, which I wasn't at that time. I'm not interested in mobile home. So then another week goes by, calls me back. He goes, got this mobile home for sale. Give me $15,000. It's worth 21. I go, I'm not interested. So then he calls me back about another week later, goes, give me $12,000 and it's worth 20. Now I'm thinking to myself, all right. I'm like, do you own the land? He goes, no, it's in a mobile home park. So I'm like, I'm really not interested. So then about 3 weeks go by. He calls me again, goes, I got this mobile home, it's worth 21. Give me $6,000 for it. Now I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is a deal.
Nice.
But then I'm like, you know what? I'm still not interested. No, thank you. I was talking to him. I found out what happened was he doesn't live there. And he kept having bills and lot rents and stuff, and he couldn't pay that stuff. So I go to him, I'm not interested, but to help you, I'll give you $3,000. Goes, oh, give me 4,000. I'm going, I'm not interested. No, thank you. So he agreed to 3,000. I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get a contract done up and have somebody come out and inspect the property. I hung up the phone, called the newspaper, put a classified ad up, mobile home for sale, owner financing for $25,000 with $3,000 down. So
Nice.
some lady called me up, her and her boyfriend or fiance, they went out, checked it out, they liked the property. And so she gave me $3,000 down, which I took that $3,000 and I went and gave the seller that $3,000 to buy it. And then I ended up creating a note for the difference. I think it was it was, I think, 7.5% over 7 years. And I think it was a little around $300 a month. And I was at 19. So that was my car payment and insurance payment at the age of 19. So that was my
Nice.
first real creative deal. And I had no clue what I was doing. But then I took off several years because I started wanting to learn the career in the business world. So, and then I came back around to at the age of 24. So that's how I got started.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a cool first deal. And then just how you got going, and then just the ability to stick to your number. And what I think that we miss sometimes is that we get really hungry, like see a deal out there and we want to jump on it right away and pounce on it. And really, we should let it simmer a little bit. Now, in the hotter markets, it's really tough to do, right? You don't want to simmer too long. You can't still in the slow motion type stuff. But you kind of set it up, right? You set up this hard sell type thing, and you didn't really know it at the time,
No
which is
clue what I was
really
doing.
cool.
No
So we got
clue
a
at all.
question here from
And
Desmond.
yep.
You want to jump into questions, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, let's just we'll keep talking, but if anybody has any questions, we'll definitely pull it on. And if anybody wants to come on camera and ask the question on camera, we'll be more than happy to do it. If you don't, you can just kind of throw it into the side chat. So, Gabe, if there's a question in the side chat, I'll let you read it. And if somebody wants to come on, just pop up and put your hand up or come on camera, and we'll just pull you onto the stage. But go ahead, Gabe.
All right. So we have from Desmond, we have there's an optimal way to find an off-market seller finance deal. Or is there an optimal way to find an off-market seller finance deal? I can talk to people, no problem. I'm just not sure how to look for these type of deals.
Sure. You want to answer that? Then I'll answer it. We'll both give answers.
Yeah, we both get it. So how to find off-market seller finance deals? Well, the trick is looking for the avatar of the type of person who wants to sell or finance. I've noticed recently that we've been getting a ton of deal flow coming from people who've been in the house less than 4 years, right? So if you wanted to pull a search, the best way to do a sub 2 deal is to pull, when do you think in your market do you think that there was the best, and this is my opinion, the best time to have the best rates, right? So you don't want to have a property that's, it's a 30-year note and you're going to acquire it and it only has like 5 years left on it, and they're going to want you to have a huge down payment, right? So there's going to be a spread there. So if you go back maybe 6 years, 7 years maybe, and then find that cushion before the rates start going really high, then you can find that sweet spot. And then that sweet spot is the age of a property, right? And then if you want to look to like in certain neighborhoods, I don't know what community you guys are in because everyone's all over this across the nation. But if like for us, we have some new build communities. We have one that just came in today. It's 1,400 square feet, new build community, but every other house in there is 1,800 square feet and higher. So it's one of the few small homes that they put in this neighborhood. So no matter what they do, there's a new house right down the street. They're never going to get full value for that property. So the problem with them, with this seller, is that they know they can only get so much and they're going to compete and they got to move on, right? They've been in this house for 2.5 years. So that would be a sweet spot, right, of how to find a seller financing deal, because they have really just a few options. And one of them is going to be, we could take over the payments, we could give them some cash, and then we do the normal sub 2 route.
I like that. That's good. So I'll kind of give you some tips how I do it, how to find off-market deals. Mainly, over the years, I built up my bird dog network, referral network. And it does take time, and I'll kind of go down that in a second here. So what I've done in my bird dog network is I built landscapers, snowplow removals, people that go into people's cleaning homes, Uber drivers, Amazon drivers, contractors, a lot of different people that are out there in the field. One of the quickest and most cost-effective ways, but are bandit signs. Like we buy houses. However, just be very careful for the municipality, because some municipalities, they can have an issue with it. But what I typically do is I will put the signs up like on a Friday. I would put signs up on a Friday about 5 p.m. and it will last for the whole entire weekend. And then a lot of times the municipality will take it down like on Monday. Long holidays, weekends are great. Put them out. Make sure you put them in a nice, good, high traffic area. They work really well. But back to my bird dogs, I would say where I get my best bird dogs. And normally I shouldn't be. I usually I keep this to myself, but are hospice nurses. Those are the really ones where I really get a lot of great amazing deals from. I actually had one not too long ago that I just had one up in New England where it came from. And when it comes from a hospice nurse, there's really no selling or any type of referral. There's not a lot of selling involved because think about it, when somebody gives you a referral, it's if it's almost like a lay down, if you will, because they're it's coming from somebody else that's giving a referral. But this particular one, what it was an elderly couple, and it was up in New England. He's been in hospice for a few months, and she's elderly, and now she's to the point where she can't take care of him at night, so they had to move in with a daughter, and the daughter lived about 3 hours away. So they called me up. They've lived in this home for 35, 38 years. They called me up and they said, "Hey, got this property. The biggest concern is we can't get it ready. There's too much for them to do to get it ready, put on the market, and list it with a realtor." So their biggest and so I offered two. I offered a cash offer, and then I offered a seller financing offer to them. And the biggest concern is just all the stuff. So I said, just take what you want, whatever you don't want, leave behind. I mean, they left everything on: cable boxes, modems, holiday decorations. So they left so much behind. So I gave two offers and
The
they end up going
sheets.
with the seller. Yep. So they went with a seller financing offer. That's what they did, on a 7-year term balloon. And what I've found usually when it comes to like a hospice, if it's a, two couples and it's only one of them that's ill, they usually like the seller financing because they like that passive income coming in. And or if it's the children, they want the cash offer because the children just want to go to Vegas for the weekend. That's kind of what I found. But one of the biggest concerns with when it comes to a hospice nurse, or if somebody is older, they're like, "What am I going to do? Once I pass away, where's my?" They're worried about the money. So what I do on this particular case is the mortgage that was in the seller's name, because the house was free and clear. I end up putting the mortgage into a trust, a family trust. They help them out, set it up. So if anything happens to the parents, it gets passed down to the beneficiaries of the trust. So anyways, hopefully that helped. There's a next question. Yeah, glad to help there. So
Yeah, for
keep bringing
sure.
questions, people. Keep on bringing them. Go ahead, Gabe.
Yeah, so we have next from Tame, we have, hey, how are we filtering for those type of people? I'm guessing he's thinking about searches because I was talking more about searching. Um, I don't know how you would filter towards it, but basically, there's a lot of ways to do it though. If you're in your own MLS, there's ways to do it. It depends on what search items you use. Like if you're using PropStream or like a search list, you can find those. Um, I mean, honestly, guys, right now, I think in the marketplace in general, if you had the capital to spend, I really do agree with Mark though. Like if you just want to go and start looking for stuff now, I mean, gosh, we have 100,000 people in this group. If you're looking for acquiring notes, if you're looking at doing it yourself and you want to be in there and you want to have a seller finance note, there's multiple ways to do it. One, you really have to start prepping your mind to have that question always handled. If someone calls in, like Mark did on his first deal, he was talking about, oh, I really don't want this deal, not unless you like gave it to me. Well, I don't want to give it to you, but I'm looking at, making something off of it. And then you go back into it and you go, okay, you go through the options that, well, are you, not unless you're interested in like seller financing or anything like that, where you could do that route. And if they're understanding, you might need to explain a little bit. I call it debt takeover when it comes to sub twos because most people don't understand that. Um, so I just go, hey, we'll do a debt takeover. We just take over the debt on the property. We'll make those payments for you. Oh, okay. And then they'll say, what does that look like? And then you go into that conversation of what it looks like to them, right? Not to you. Just this is the big deal that Mark and I talk about. What does it look like to the seller? So, right, Mark, this is a big thing. Like how we explain that is in the seller's perspective, not in our perspective of all the documents and all the stuff that we have to do. First, you might need to warm them up a little bit. Okay,
All
cool. We
right,
got some
let's
good
go to the next
questions.
question. Yeah.
All right,
All
we
right, go to the
have
next one here.
uh Good.
Best spread, what is the best spread?
Yep. What is the best spread to create a second on a note in trying to sell firsts and start packing seconds for retirement? Interesting. I like it.
Yep.
It's a good question for Mark.
You want me to go into? Okay. Let me give you an example. The one that, see, first of all, I really don't sell my notes. I like to hold my notes because I like that passive income. The one example that I just gave you that came from the hospice nurse. So that particular deal, how I structured, I also got 2 months with no payments because I had to get the house ready. So I structured it with 2 months, brought an auction company in, sold everything off. Then I took that capital and did some cosmetics. So on that particular deal, I structured it with a seller. My rate was at 4% with a seller, and my payment, I don't know exactly the amount, but the payment is $991 a month um, to the seller. I tacked on $79,000 to the purchase price because I could do that based off of the cosmetics, brought it up to ARV, and then usually you can sell it a little bit more for a premium when you're doing seller financing. So I tacked on 79,000, and then the rate to my end buyer on that note is 7.75. So they're paying me close to $2,300 a month, which is within market for that particular area. So I'm cash flowing. So that's kind of how I like to do the spread. If you want to know more about notes, I am in a note mastermind. David Putz in the seller financing group, reach out to him. He's always posting stuff because he does a lot of stuff with notes. But for me, I like the passive income, and I always constantly like that coming in. So, and I do have another buddy, Dan, that he buys notes, and the reason why he buys them because he likes that passive income. So if you want to know a little bit more about that, feel free to reach out. But that's kind of, hopefully that answers your question. I'm
The
not sure if
spread
that's
can
answering
be
your
as big
question.
as you want, though. I mean, if you really think about it, the spread can be 10K, 20K. It just has to be a certain dollar amount. Let's say, so we have one where, um, let's say the first lien is 125, the second lien is, let's just give it $10,000 just for the give you a perspective of how micro you can go. So, and let's say we sold it for 160. Well, if we sold it for 160, we get 15K down payment. Now we're at 145. That's pretty much the note that I created. So if you want to do where you split that up, where you have a first lien and a second lien, right? You can do a $10,000 second lien. That would put you at 135 on the first, $10,000 on the second, and you can just sell that first lien and you can hold that first or that second in your own name. And then that's just kind of like long-term pocket money. You made it out of thin air, really, because you didn't put any money into it, or you maybe did, but you got it cashed back. So that's just really unlimited returns. And you could do that for many, many properties. And I know a couple guys in my area that does that in bulk. Um, what's next? Are you doing any direct mail, Mark? Or if you are, what are your targets? So I know Mark does not.
Um,
Do you?
yeah, I don't do direct mail. You've done some direct mail.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a direct mail guy. But that's a great idea. And I know several people and a couple of my members do that. And I think it's great. I know Dan, I cycle with a gentleman every morning and he's at real estate and he's getting ready to do his direct mail. So
Yeah, that's what we were talking about
really,
when I was over there.
yeah,
That was cool.
yeah.
Hearing his strategy and what he's doing. Um, and not to cut you off,
So
but yeah, you know.
how about you, Gabe? Have you done direct mail?
Yes, we do direct mail. We're actually going to put out a whole nother, we just pulled another list today that we're putting out. Um, how are we doing our searches? I use a couple ways to use my targets. I do like PropStream still. I do have some other stuff, and I also do commercial stuff too. So I direct mail commercial properties also. Um, so that's it. And then as far as your targets go, for me, I haven't found a certain niche at all for these are the specific type of people that love to do seller financing. Um, typically seller financing is they're going to have a bigger spread, right? They're going to have more equity or all equity, right? It's all paid off. If you're going to do the sub two route, what I've noticed for myself is that if you have a note, let's say if the house is worth 200, or the note was originally 200, and now there's only $60,000 left, then they're going to want quite a big chunk of change to get that cash out of that property, right? Now, the caveat caveat to that is what's the shape of the property? Maybe it's in junky shape. And if it's in really bad shape, then someone's gonna that's where you get to go back and negotiate and go, okay, well, it needs a lot of work. I'll pay you, 65, $70,000 for this property. And then if there's only 60K left over in the note, you can pay them that cash, then you can roll that over on a sub two. But I noticed that on seller financing, the only type of list that I can really pull is maybe an equity list to be very specific. And then, you got the normal urgencies, right, Mark? Like, are they going pre-foreclosure? Are they bankruptcy or divorce or death in the family or probate? So, okay.
I want to
Good.
piggyback off of that real quick because we're starting to get quite a few questions, so we have to move it along. One of what I like targeting if I'm pulling a list are non-owner occupied properties that the sellers own it for roughly 12 to 15 years plus. Those people tend to be a little bit more open for seller financing, and they like the passive income, and they've already done everything and they're kind of getting a little tired. What I've found, if it's an investor that's owned a property for 5 years, 7 years or less, they're typically taking all the meat off the bone and they want to take that, they're trying to sell it or getting a high amount and they're trying to roll it into a 1031. But what I found is people that have owned it longer, those are the best ones. Or yeah, those are the best ones of targeting, in my opinion, is like people have owned a home for 15 years plus and they just want that passive income. So let's jump to the next question. I'll take this one because I've been really talking a lot about this one. It's from Sean. I hear from people chat about subject to strategy. You feel that the regulars are going to come in and end the party. Um, Hopefully they don't. That's why a lot of us experienced investors that have been doing this a long time have been really out there. I've been vocal in the seller financing group. John Johnson's been in there. Jonathan Rexford, just several of us that have been around that have seen regulators come in and change our industry. It's happened. I've seen it happen in 2008. I've seen it before 2008. The last one, we had the Dodd-Frank put in place and we had the SAFE Act put in place for this. Hopefully, they end up following the Texas rules. Texas just put a lot of rules in place for seller financing. What's been happening is traditionally when you did a subject to is an advanced strategy, and typically there really wasn't doing assignments. Nowadays, in the past year, everybody's been doing assignments. So these people that are structuring the deals really don't understand the whole process. They just think, oh, I can structure deals, sell it, make money. They don't understand that if the end buyer stops paying, they're going to get pulled into it. So, and I did a video a few days ago. I did one last year where when you're doing these subject to deals, you're structuring with a seller. That's great. You're helping the seller out. You're making a little money, but you're also going to put the end buyer in it. If that end buyer stops paying, you as the investor should be the one stepping in and making those payments on their behalf. And what's happening is right now, these investors are doing assignments, don't have the capital, and they're struggling, and they can't make the payment on behalf. And now the lenders are starting. Now we're starting to see the lenders be aware of what's happening. They're starting to see a default rate peak up on the subject too. So now some lenders are starting to think about starting to do the due on sales clause. So there's two things. So that's why we're out there trying to educate people. Hey, subject to is great, but make sure if you're doing assignment or make sure you're selling it to an investor that has experience in inventing your buyer correctly, so they don't default on it. There's a gentleman out there that went out there and just acquired about 100 of them over the last 6 months, and he's defaulting on a lot of them right now. So we're trying to get ahead of
Wow.
it, so to try to fix this so the regulars don't come in. But if you have a deal and you structure it and your end buyer stops paying, do what you can to try to fix that and work with the seller. Try to, if need to be, go raise some capital, bring another investor in. I've done that. I've purchased some deals before and got the person out. So try to be a little bit creative on it. You are creative putting it in a deal. You want to be creative and trying to solve the problem. In my case, I lost $47,000 on a deal last year because I kept making the payments and I couldn't get these people out. Which you're going to have some losers, but you're going to have more winners, and that's why you should always work with somebody that has some experience and make sure the people that are doing the subject twos know what they're doing on that.
Good.
Anyways, we'll go on to the next
Good.
one.
Yeah. Okay.
You,
We have Kevin, where do I
Kevin.
get the documents for creative financing deal, or do I hire an attorney? Well, go ahead, Mark.
Um, you know, a couple different ways. I mean, typically you can use your state contract to do a creative deal, and then you do an addendum. Like if you're doing seller financing, you do a seller financing addendum. If you're going to do a subject to, you can do a subject to addendum. You can just do a different addendums. Attorneys can do it. I've spent a lot of money on attorneys doing contracts. So you definitely want to make sure you're doing that correctly. But you also want to make sure you're using the state contract to make sure you're in compliance for your state on that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I would
mean,
recommend an attorney.
Texas is pretty
Oh,
open to this though, Mark. Like on a contract, if a typical Trek contract, there is a whole document for creative financing, and I'm sure that there's many states that have that,
they
right?
do.
Where, yeah. So I mean, it's nothing. So let's just diffuse that weird bomb of like what, like this is really crazy, very creative. It might just be creative for then a traditional transaction, right? But the reality is, seller financing has been going on for hundreds of years. This is pretty much how
Yes,
contracts were worked before the banks got involved. So let me add this person in. Oop, you
you
got it.
did. Yeah.
Um, so the reality is, creative financing is just another way of us looking at ways that's other than the traditional use a bank. So most contracts, somewhere in there, if it's through their licensing of your state, they're going to have something in there because they just should, because seller financing is not an odd thing. I think
Mhm.
for us is that we're looking at creative ways to acquire property that might be in a unique situation. Um, so let's keep
You
going.
don't see a you don't see a lot of states with a subject to addendum. That you do see the seller financing addendum, but
Oh yeah,
you could take your seller
absolutely.
financing addendum and structure it and just write it. The best bet is write it out the best as possible and get it signed, and then take it to your closing agent and have them review it as well. And if there's any adjustments, have them review it. If there's any adjustments, you can always do an addendum to your contract.
All right.
Cool.
How do we get around the due on sale clause?
Want me to take that?
Yeah, you
Okay.
got it. You taught
There's
me.
you really can't get around the due on sales clause. It was put back in the mid 80s. They used to do assumptions. So that's where some people get confused with a subject to and assumable loans. It's not. It's because assumable loans, you actually have to go in and you got to qualify with the particular lender that's actually holding that note. So what I do is how I get around my due on sales clause, and it's not really getting around it, but it helps, is I put all mine into a trust, a land trust. So, and you can put properties into a trust for estate purposes. This is part of the Dreamland Act that was put in place. So you can do that. It helps because a trust is not the beneficiary, the person that owns the trust, and the grantor is not disclosed, but the trustee is. So just make sure whoever's a trustee, the trustee's name is going to be signed on there. So you could use the closing agent, attorney, sometimes the sellers. There's a lot of different ways of doing that, but that's what I do on mine to kind of get around to doing sales calls. But if it does get called due, there's always ways to work around that. So I wouldn't worry about that. For years, we didn't have that happening. I am a little concerned right now because of the default rates with the subject twos. That's kind of why we're out there pushing it, where the lenders could start looking into it. But that's how I do mine, is on that the land trust. So next question. Tommy's
I
got
like
one.
this
Go ahead.
question here. This is a good one, Tommy. How much is the cash on cash return, or, ooh, it just moved. Hold on. How much cash return or cash flow should I be looking for on each deal? What does a good deal or does a bad deal look for or look like? This is, I think, is the question that we should be talking about. I think this is something that's motivating for me because my first deals, I just wanted to get in there and just get some stuff going. And so, my cash on cash return or my cash flow, the quote unquote, the spread was not that great. Mark, what would you advise for someone? I mean, I know it differs per marketplace, per type of deal. If it's a $450,000 deal, might be a little different than if it's a $250,000 deal. But how do you regulate that, or how do you
Um,
go through that?
how I look at mine is I like to have at least a $450 minimum cash flow. So I don't really look at the cash on cash. I look at what's the cash flow on it? That's that's usually the number one thing, how much my cash flowing, and then the capital that I'm putting into the deal, I like to get my capital back out in like 12 to 18 months. That's my guideline. I know some people will purchase a property and they're not getting the cash back until like 3, 4, 5 years. Um, so that's how I look at it. But I also will look at it, and I've done situations where I was only cash flowing $50 on a deal, and actually I was negative on a deal one time, $49, but I had $109,000 in equity spread on it. So it's a kind of a case by case, but when I underwrite it, I always look at I'm always looking at the cash flow, and then I look at the equity. But I'm willing to pay, and I pay top dollar for a property, whatever the value is, and even if it's pulling back a little bit, I'll still pay top dollar for that property as long as I'm getting my terms, meaning 5, 7, 10, 15 years on that, 30 years, whatever it may be, to make sure that the value is going to come back. But I want to make sure my cash flow is there. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I love that question because I think that's something that, I mean, it's really the decision maker, right? Like once you run all the numbers, Mark, you're going, okay, what am I going to walk away with? What am I really doing? And I was in a commercial event just this past weekend. I was telling someone that I created this note, right? So I'm creating this note, told them the whole thing that I'm doing. And it's like, yeah, so we bought this house for basically 12K. And then I took over the payments and then all this, and then I'm going to, do these other things, rent it out and whatnot. And I'm going to have the spread. And he looked at me, his mouth dropped, and he goes, "You can buy houses, right? Like for that amount? Oh my gosh, I can't even believe that's possible." So it's really it's the reason why we do this. Next one, commercial masterminds, would you recommend? Siobhan,
Sure, Gabe.
if you want to text me, I can I guess send you different groups that I'm part of.
Yeah, you got a good one that you're in. Yeah, you were just in Florida for that one. There's another one, the core. That's not a bad one. Ryan Dummish, you can reach out to Ryan, the core. It's called The Core. I just recommend I send him over. But I know Gabe, he's more in the commercial world. I'm more in the residential. I do some commercial stuff, but I'm not really in the mastermind groups as you are, Gabe. But yeah, you can reach out to Gabe on that stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
All
If
right,
the end
let's go
buyer
to the next
stops
one.
paying, the initial seller can go into foreclosure, bankruptcy, right? Sub two deals aren't a bench on contract breach on sub two deals are not a breach on contract with the mortgage company, right? Wouldn't that make these contracts null?
So it's not well, technically it is a breach if you think about it. And that's a great question there, Sean. Um, typically I'm trying to understand his question. Contracts in the mortgage company, wouldn't that make the contract null? Like what contract is he talking about between the seller and the mortgage company, or is he talking to the seller and investor and the buyer? So I mean, because you got several different contracts going on there. So, but anyways, that's why I was just mentioning before, if the buyer stops paying, that's why the investor should be the one stepping in and making those payments. And then if it's done the right way, and I've done this before, I've taken properties and kept making the payments to the seller, and then got the buyer out and turn around and sold it again, and I actually came out ahead. Sure, it hurt a little bit during that time period, but the market went up even more, and I ended up getting ahead by $75,000 because the market went up. Where the seller, or my end buyer, could have actually just sold it and made probably $10,000-$15,000. So, but anyways, the contract's null and void. I've never had that as a problem, but I see what you're saying, and that is a great question. And I would probably, that's more of an attorney question, but it seems like it would be. But the lenders typically would just go through the process and file. They'll that's where the due on sales clause really comes in. You're it's non-invoice, so they're calling the loan due. So hopefully that answers your question on that. The more I think about it. All right. If you have any more questions on that, Sean, reach out. All right. What else we have? Sean, FHA assumable. You got that one, Gabe.
So if the FHA is assumable, right? I think it depends on what bank they're with also. So you got to think that out too. So we've been calling well, first of all, keep in mind that assumable means that you're going to assume the loan, but you're going to have to get qualified for it. Like that's what assumable really means. So if someone says you can assume the loan, it just means that what gets locked in, the rate gets locked in, the loan amount gets locked in, the terms get locked in, the big three, right? the terms, is it like still, is it 320 months left? How many months is left? The interest rate, right? The dollar amount of the loan where you don't have to bring any major money to the table or anything like that. But you're still going to need to get qualified to assume that debt. And then what happens is that debt gets rolled over into your name. And that's the idea of assumed loan. Nicole from Core, can you explain a little bit on the exit of a sub 2? End of mortgage or refi built into the contract? Hey, Nicole from Core. Can you see that one, Mark?
Oh,
From
hey,
Nicole?
Nicole. She's from the core. Hey, Nicole.
The core.
Yeah, can you explain a little bit on the exit of the subject to end of the mortgage, refinance it, or info the contract? I'll take that one. Yeah, so typically, well, first of all, typically most loans or most people, the average loan is 7 years on a mortgage. So that's typically. Um, you could, for whatever reason, they sell the house or refinance it, whatever it may be. But usually if you're on a subject to exit, like I like exiting on a lease option. So I buy it in a subject to, and then I'll sell it on a lease option as a rent to own. That's kind of what my model, that's what I do. Or depending on the state, because some states are not landlord friendly. Um, because then you can kind of run into a little bit of problem because then it's more state could say, oh, it's landlord tenant law. And it may take them a little bit longer to get out. But it's still the process. So it's a little bit easier in some other states getting them out faster versus actually wrapping it because then it's considered a foreclosure. Hopefully that's answering your question.
Yeah, if you need
But
more clarification, let us know on that, Nicole, because I want to make sure that we get those questions answered. Okay. Do we have any more
run
here
through
to
these.
go over? I felt like we ran through pretty quick. We did good.
We did. Sean's got a question. Sub two contracts. Not sure if this comes up, but when you approach an owner for owner financing and they ask why can't you just get the mortgage from the bank? So this is the whole thing of creative financing. And if the seller brings that up, okay, it's all psychological and it's really nailing down and understanding the seller's needs and wants. So this is why you're creative. And I'll give you an example of one here in a second. Um, so you're really asking questions on why they're selling and why they need the capital. If you can understand that and then be creative enough and structure your deals around that, that's what really makes the creative financing. I had to jump. Let me give you an example of one. One of my members in my program, we had a property that was in Georgia. This was actually it was spring of last year. So what happened was the seller had a house free and clear. He wanted to sell it for $128,000, but he wanted $30,000 down. He was open to seller financing. He goes, no problem, seller financing, but it's $120,000. So I'm on the phone, myself and my member, we're going back and forth. I'm building a rapport with the seller. So I'm always about 80% of my conversations with sellers is about building rapport and getting to know them. Because if you're doing seller financing or subject to, it's like dating. You're gonna be in a relationship with these people for a while. So think about it. If you're on a first date with somebody, how are you gonna have that conversation? Are you just gonna go, hey, let's go, or are you gonna build a rapport, get to know them? So it's kind of like dating. So in this particular case, I'm on the phone talking to him. Hey, how long you been? How many kids you have? What's the name of your dog? Why you retiring? Why is he retiring? And then I'm asking questions. You know, who do you bank with? He goes, I bank with a credit union. And then I'm just pulling a lot of this information out. And then I'm asking him, how's your credit? He's got good credit. And I'm like, well, when you sell the property, what are you planning on doing with the capital? He goes, oh, I need $25,000 for this camper that I'm going to get, and I'm going to be going camping. And he started naming the different places where he's going camping. So then I'm getting all this information, asking these questions, and just in a conversation way. I'm not like, hey, how many bedrooms? I'm not asking that. I'm having an engagement and conversation with them, and I'm trying to find out, are they a head person? They're about numbers. Are they a heart person? If they're a heart person, they start talking about, hey, we had a family here, the neighbors, we have holiday parties, we had the block party, those, or a gut person. So I'm trying to determine on the person of the psychological, what's more important to them. But back to this question, So I'm finding him out all this information. So I go to the seller, said, "So you're open to seller financing. What is the number one problem that you're having? Why can't you sell this property?" He goes, "Everybody tells me I'm asking too much money down." And I go to him, I said, "I'm gonna be frank. Nobody's gonna put that much capital down on a $128,000 home. We could take that capital and deploy that into several different assets. But this is what I'll do. I'll give you $3,500 down. You mentioned you belong to the credit union and you got great credit. So you go to the credit union, get the $25,000, and on the 20th of every month, we'll automatically go ahead and make the payment for that camper on your behalf directly to the credit union. And because of that, we end up getting the deal, and we only cost us $3,500 to put that down. And what I told him is what we'll do is we'll create a Gmail just for that particular portal. So every time there's a payment being made, when there's an email going out, it goes to him and it goes to my bookkeeper, so everybody's getting it. So because of that, and I pulled all that information out, I solved his seller's needs, and that's how we end up getting that deal. Hopefully that helped there. All
Yeah,
right.
that is the
Um,
creative side of doing real estate, is just thinking. It's the same strategy though, right, Mark? And that's the craziest part about all of this. This is the fun part about creative financing, is that the strategy is seller financing, right? It's the other levers that we pull within this ecosystem of seller financing. So you decide to do seller financing, and you will work out a deal with the credit union and with him, and then, maneuvering these things around. It's the same thing of going, okay, well, we'll create a trust, and you need to have money left over for your granddaughter for her college education. We'll have the payment go towards that trust instead. Okay. So there's all these different things and these little levers that you can pull within that same strategy of seller financing, right? Which is really what we're talking about. This is really the key of how you can acquire properties. We created or collected, while we're waiting. If anyone else has any questions, I think we might be wrapping up, but
I
we
think Tommy's
collected
got one. Yeah,
Tommy does.
Tommy's got one.
Can
Yeah,
you
Tommy.
and Gabe give us an example of your best creative finance deal you're proudest about? Oh, that's fun. Okay, cool. So yeah, I'll go into this is something that we purchased. This was a commercial property, and try to get the price down lower and lower. Gave the whole thing that we all do over and over. And to be honest with you, I wasn't sure that we even wanted the property at this dollar amount. And so what we did was, I said, listen, the only way that I can even pay that number is if you're going to come up with some cash yourself to do that. And you're going to have to finance it for us or something, because there's nobody that I know that would allow me to provide my own financing. I don't want to put my own cash towards it. And there's no lender, there's no bank, there's no one that would approve this. Now I knew the long-term value of this property because it's quite a bit of land. So just the way that it was set up, there was really nobody that would be able to get this approved. So what I did was I created two notes. I had one note with the lender that I know of, and then I created the second note as the seller. So the seller did a seller finance note on a property. And she goes, look, I don't need all the cash. I just want the cash out so I can go buy a house and buy a car, and I want to reposition and do these other things. I said, well, how much is that going to be? And so we just kind of worked that out of what she really, I mean, I'm pulling out a pen, and I know the same thing that I talked with that Mark just said. I know everything about her. I know about the cats. I know about the dogs. I know about her family. I know about where she wants to move to. I'm looking up for the next place for her to move. Right. So I'm doing all these things. And so I'm like mapping it out. And this is the part that I think people overlook, is that you pull out that piece of paper and you want to just map it out. So let's think this thing through. How much do you need? How much is that car going to be? How much is that next house going to be? How are you going to finance that? Okay, so you just want to use cash, and you go through that process with them as you think it through. And then what ended up happening was I was like, okay, well, this is the number of cash that you need, and the rest of it will be in a note strategy. So that way she can get that monthly payment. And that's what we were just talking about. And so that was a really fun strategy. That was just a bigger size deal. We have multiple crazy things that have come up out of using that strategy, but that's just one of the many. And majority of the time, Mark, I find myself helping people to move on, right? And that's really what we're helping people do, is like we're hearing the life story of some sort, and we're helping them move on from whatever. We just helped out a guy move out of a house. He just had it wasn't a bad situation. He just got a different job. And he's like, man, I live 4.5 hours away. My wife and kids, I don't see them. I'm a baseball dad. I love being at the field. I love helping my kids. And I just need a different way out. So we helped him out of that strategy, right? And that was kind of like one of those internal things that we just was really glad that we were able to help him out. And this house is literally like 10 months old, right? So we got almost a perfect home for that whole strategy. So yeah, that's one of ours.
I'll go I'll go over. I got two of them, two ones that come to my head. I'd say my first one, I purchased 13 units with zero down. It came from one of my bird dogs. It actually came from a hospice nurse. Purchased that with zero down and closed on August 30th. And then 2 days later, we collect a little bit more than $10,000 in rent check. So that deal came to me, and I ended up bringing one of my members into it, into that particular deal. So that's probably my great one, or one of my good ones. And now we increase the rents and we're cash flowing close to $7,000 a month on that deal. So that was one.
Nice.
And that came from a hospice
That's a
nurse. What
that's
happened
a
on that
juicy.
one is the father was a landlord, had all these properties, and he passed away, and then the 28-year-old daughter took it over, and she was managing it for about 5 years. He passed away about 8, 10 years prior to that. Then the daughter took it over, and she got in a motorcycle accident, and she couldn't. Then the mother reached out. The mother and the other daughter, the other daughter's attorney, they reached out to me and say, "Hey, you buy properties." So we got on the phone. We found out like how much does the mother need to live off of, and she said, "I need to live off of 2,500 a month." So we negotiated, got it down to 2,300. So right off the bat, we are cash flowing roughly about $4,500, and then we went in and increased the rents and did a little value add. So that was one of them. And then my other one was another creative deal. It was a land deal few years ago up in Georgia, and the seller wanted to sell this land for 1.5 million dollars. One, po- and it was free and clear. So I don't remember exactly how many acres, but then I went out and found a builder developer, and we kind of figured out we could put 49 homes on this particular property. And what we end up doing is we structured the deal with the seller, kind of made like a JV, and the seller end up, instead of the 1.5, he ended up making 3.1 on it. The reason why is because every time we sold a lot off, he got paid. And the builder loved it because he didn't have to put any capital down from the bank. We used the land as a leverage, as a deposit. So those two deals are kind of the ones that really stand out from me on those two. Sean's got a couple
That's
more
awesome.
questions there. So yeah, the podcast, it goes through like a whole editing with our editing team and everything on that. So the really, the best bet, if you have any questions, just to reach out to us, like through the seller financing group, or one of those. You can find us on social media. Do you guys teach how to assign, what is it, portfolios subject to an owner financing? Is that what he's asking? Do you teach how to assign portfolios and subject to? Yeah, I do have a mentorship. I have a mentorship group that I have. Um, yeah, do you guys teach mentorship? Yeah, we do. Let me drop in a link. We'll put it in the Zoom as well. And let me see if I have that link. So if you want, you can fill this link and put some information in, and I'll reach out to you, or one of my members will reach out to you and kind of talk to you a little bit more about, the program that we tend to do. Give me 1 second here. I'll go ahead and pop this into the link for you guys. Whoops. Leave in Facebook. Bear with me 1 second here. All right. So it's a Google, and there you go. And then I also have a book. I don't know if you guys saw that. You can get on Amazon. It's called Creative Real Estate Investing. Anybody that's in here right now and listening to this, if you guys want a free copy of it, reach out to me or fill out that form, and I'll have my admin send you the PDF version. I don't have the audio version yet. I will be doing an audio version. But if you get the PDF one, or my admin will send to you, Adobe will actually read it out loud to you if you want to do that, or Google actually has, I'm sorry, Chrome actually has an extension that will read anything on the website, and you can pull the PDF there as well. But yeah, I think this was great, Gabe. I love it. Thank you, man.
That was awesome, guys. Yeah, Mark, good job. Um, you guys have Mark's contact information. You have our contact information. And Mark, and you got anything else to close out?
Yes. Oh, Nicole, he's highly recommend. Thank you so much. No, if you want to reach out, my website, well, Tommy's got it too. Okay. My website also is Mark, M-A-R-K, the minus sign Monroe, M-O-N-R-O-E, .com. So M-A-R-K, the minus on the keyboard, Monroe. So yeah, I'm glad it's helped out. If anybody else has any questions at all, feel free to reach out to us. Max, thank you. Yeah, Max, I appreciate it. Max, I had a great time, and thank you for that dinner. He took me to this place and I'd never been. It's pretty cool. It's called Seed to Table. And this
Oh
was like,
yeah.
have you ever heard of it? It is
Yeah.
super cool. So the owner is the owner of Sprouts,
Yeah.
and this thing is all done up, and Max took me there, and you can buy your food and they'll cook your food right there while they have it all set up and they have all the
That's
seating. So
awesome.
I guess we had like a ribeye for like 14.95 a pound on sale, something like that. And Max, gotta check this out. So I end up he ended up getting me a nice steak and it was amazing. So we went there. It's the owner of Sprouts, but this thing's like on steroids. It's a great
That's
time.
awesome.
Cool, man.
All right,
Well,
guys. Well, have a good night. We'll see you guys next time, and let's keep this going. Let's answer some questions next time, guys. See you.
take care, guys. Thank you guys so much. Enjoy. Hopefully we helped you guys.